The Canby Report was produced and recorded on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples.
It's January 29th, 2026, and there are 261 days until the Vancouver municipal elections. This is the Canby Report. I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield. It's that show that is always here and always great and always includes both of us.
We're back. I'm sorry that we left you for so long. It was busy. We were tired. I've been sick a little bit, though that's hardly an excuse because I'm obviously just doing this and you're just going to have to suffer through me as I struggle through this podcast today. But we couldn't leave you without an update on politics, zoning, development, other municipal things in Vancouver and its environs. So here we are. And you know what helps us bring this to you? Your money. Patreon.com/Canby Report.
At the very least, subscribing to our Patreon gets you into our Slack channel where the discussion never ends. People always have thoughts, opinions, and the latest updates. The best comment I saw recently was one supporter saying, I don't need to follow social media as much because I have this Slack. And the real answer is there's a bunch of hyper posters who are way too much online on social media and they just bring the best of, but it's like a curated selection. So patreon.com/Canby Report to become part of that selection.
It's like a newsletter, except it's not curated by us, but rather by a community of civic politics nerds. If we could get people to spend less time on social media, if that's the only impact that this podcast has, I think that will have been a success. Social media is a cancer. Also a cancer, possibly, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim. There is a hilarious story in the Georgia Straight about how much the Vancouver City Councillors have distanced themselves from Mayor Ken Sim, written by Nathan Cattle. And, well, people on City Council are not loving the mayor.
Yeah, the list kind of goes from the couldn't be more distant tier that includes Sean Orr of Cope, the extreme distance tier of Pete Fry and Lucy Maloney, the trying to distance but tier, which includes just Rebecca Bly.
I like Rebecca Bly. I do want to point that out. I've supported her and I voted for her a couple of times, and it gives me pause that, while at least in the first time, her leaving the NPA was a fairly principled stance, this time it's a little less clear. It's either a question of why are you not able to coordinate with a team, or on the other hand, is your judgment bad in getting into these teams that require you to take such principled stands later?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the by-election that happened early last year. It began with strategist Stephen Carter getting on the phone to tell her she's out of the party, and then they lost both seats. Neither of them were ABC seats prior to the by-election, but it is very funny that Stephen Carter managed to lose seats in a by-election
where none of his seats were on the ballot. Yeah. That was an achievement. He is a trailblazer in the world of Canadian political organizing, and I suppose he should be very proud.
The staying loyal so far but tier includes Lisa Dominato and Peter Meisner, probably the most moderates of the ABC crowd. The loyal but establishing themselves separately tier is Sarah Kirby-Young and Mike Klassen. Probably the more prominent will happily speak up, but tend to be, quote, loyal soldiers. And then I love this one, essentially Ken Sim in a different body tier of Lenny Zhao and Brian Montague, who I think we've mentioned Montague once or twice on the podcast, but it was never positive.
No. Why do people run for city council? I generally think that the reason people run for civic office is because they have something to say. And, in at least Sarah Kirby-Young and Mike Klassen's case, that has often been the case. They may agree with what Ken Sim is saying or trying to do, if not the style in which he's doing it, but they have something to say. I don't know what Zhao and Montague have to say. It doesn't seem like they bring much to the table.
It's interesting here. Nathan ends with a prediction that, quote, Montague will be the last non-Vancouver resident to hold a spot on the city council. Which is not to say that a non-Vancouver resident couldn't do a good job in council. It's more to say that Montague really hasn't.
Well, with that devastating...
But Montague is not seeking re-election, officially, the only one to say so.
Ken Sim, criticisms of him, put together a remarkably effective political machine last time, whether that's through capitalizing on dissatisfaction with Kennedy Stewart or engaging the police in a campaign of regulatory capture of municipalities by law enforcement. It was politically effective. What he's done with it is kind of lackluster, but he certainly hasn't been able to bring the same kind of energy he brought to a campaign to the office.
Nevertheless, he's eager to run again to finish the job, as he's told some of the recent interviews he's done.
How ominous. Finish the job?
As a quote he's used. He's got to finish the job.
What?
His focus is safety and affordability, Matthew. So he is trying to finish making it a safe and affordable city.
Because safety is a state that can be achieved permanently. It's not a condition of the present, but rather a task that must be done. That you can be safed. And Ken Sim wants you to be sure that he's on the case, finishing the job of safety. Wild. That's wild stuff.
He says anyone who's running for mayor or a non-ABC councillor, they all have said they want to increase property taxes. I'm a math guy, and that just makes life less affordable for renters and homeowners. So he's going to try his best to do 4 more years of 0% budget increases if he gets reelected. And we'll come back to the 0% budget. What does he mean in terms of safety? We don't know yet. But we do know what he doesn't plan to do in the next 4 years, and that's fuck around with the park board anymore or really focus a whole bunch on Bitcoin, which he still loves.
Now, some of you might be remembering a episode of the Canby Report from around 4 years ago where Ken Sim was about to pivot away from his previously announced stance in favor of a park board referendum, which went away during the campaign. He apparently loved that tactic so much that he's doing it again. So, in spite of evidence to suggest that Ken Sim might go rooting around the park board's guts after the election, the campaign will be particularly park board referendum free. He is not the only person running for mayor. Rebecca Bly is running with the Vote Vancouver Party, a party that has a red link on Wikipedia. And Kareem Alam is running for the Vancouver Liberals. We're going to get to the Vancouver Liberals in a little bit. However, the most recent announcement is, of course, current councillor Pete Fry, who has just launched his bid to be mayor after already being nominated for mayor or councillor, depending on what he ended up coming down with.
We're recording this at 2 p.m. on Thursday. I think he's officially launching tomorrow. So I'm hoping to get this onto the internet before he has launched. But it was pretty well teased, including on his own Facebook page, that he's like, I have a big announcement to come up. And everyone's like, why are you running for mayor, Pete? Or, we love you, Pete. Run for mayor. It's controversial because one city is in the midst of a nomination race, and Cope is hoping there isn't a divided slate. But if there is, we'll probably get in there as well, which makes this looking like 2018 was a harmonious election by comparison.
I do appreciate Shauna Sylvester's comment, which is effectively along the lines of, how dare you run to split the vote? To me, rang a little strange, given her run at all. But people's opinions change, and I can give them credit for that. So I guess Shauna has evolved on that particular issue. The Green Party is not the only party ranking up candidates. Indeed, the Vancouver Liberals are ranking up not only candidates, but
caucus.
School board caucus members, park board commissioners. 2 individuals, both former ABC politicians, have crossed the floor, so to speak. They've decided they're going to be sitting under the Vancouver Liberals banner. That is Park Board Commissioner Scott Jensen and School Board chair, Toria Jung.
Karim Alam is open that he has been chasing independents on different boards and councils to try to get them on his team. Rebecca Bly isn't jumping ship over there yet, but I also haven't heard anything about Vote Vancouver for a while. Maybe she's just quietly building it behind the scenes. Between Jensen and Young, these are two relatively talented politicians on their respective boards who have justifiably gained their title as independents, both by quitting ABC, but also by really approaching their jobs with an independent mind, which is what like the best of the NPA always was, a collection of quasi-politically aligned people who each had independent values to bring to city council. It wasn't always that case.
No, it wasn't always that, but at its best, the Nonpartisan Association did kind of live up to its name in being a association of nonpartisan people against socialism, of course. That is the motivating animus behind that defunct party. If there's anything that the Vancouver Liberals look like they're trying to be, it's a non-Ken Sim affiliated version of NPA 2.0. The NPA was historically very successful in Vancouver, and the Vancouver Liberals, it's unusual that the Liberal banner hasn't emerged in civic politics all that often, and certainly not in Vancouver. But now that the BC Liberal Party is gone, it's gone, it's dead. I think the name has a little bit of mental real estate in the minds of the people of the city of Vancouver for a kind of nonpartisan group of people who have shown a certain amount of independence and thoughtfulness to jump at this opportunity. As to whether or not all their ideas are good, that's something the campaign is going to have to decide. I've made my decision on at least one of those ideas, and we'll get to that in a second. I do want to say that Karim Alam is doing, at least from a superficial look at how the party is organizing itself, a pretty fantastic job of getting people involved in his party.
Yeah, and that should absolutely be the priority for him right now. It's still quite a few months out before the election. I mentioned 2018. At this point in 2018, we didn't even know who was going to run for mayor. I think we'd only just heard that Gregor Robertson confirmed he wasn't running again, at which point it was like, well, then who is running? And it took a while before we got Kennedy Stewart on the ballot and Shauna Sylvester, as you mentioned, and Ken Sim. And 2022 came a little bit faster. This is a good pace for him to start building a team, build some publicity. These are the first elected Liberals in 90 years in the city, because Jerry McGeer was a mayor under the Liberal banner when the Liberals and Conservatives fought it out in the first part of the 20th century when parties started in the city.
It was that rivalry that people got so concerned about opening the door for socialism that created the impetus for the creation of the NPA. Now, the Vancouver Liberals have proposed amalgamating the university endowment lands. This is the policy that I am scratching my head a little bit over. The university endowment lands are an area that includes Pacific Spirit Park and the area largely to the east, the University of British Columbia, Point Grey campus. It includes a lot of old housing. It includes University Village. I think Regent College is in that zone. It doesn't include University Town's developments that have happened on the south end of campus. That is outside the UEL. But it is a fairly substantial chunk of land, and I'm not sure why they think this is a good idea.
The UEL is very weird because it is unincorporated, so it's directly governed by the province. Residents who live there have no electoral democratic local representation.
No, that's not true.
They have one regional representative on Vancouver.
Yeah,
that person has no control over
it and lost.
That person has no control over the land use policies of their area. The representatives who cover city of Vancouver just next door to them, those ones you mentioned in Westbrook as part of Point Grey campus, are basically living in Company Town where they're governed by the UBC, where they don't get to have a say. I see that Karim Alam is promising to push SkyTrain to UBC, which is very classic, good Mayor of Vancouver promise. Everyone should be promising that. Maybe they kind of tie together. Like, if we own it, we can make it happen a little bit easier.
I guess, maybe. I
If
mean,
they all find a bunch of money, can they tax these people a whole bunch?
it almost, like, that. I mean, that is the reason, frankly, because there's a lot of untapped wealth that the individuals who own property in the UEL have been operating under that kind of provincial tax regime that occurs when there is no municipality. Incorporating these folks into Vancouver would allow Vancouver to tax them at their mill rate, which is unchanged.
That's the real thing here, though. If the people who live in the UEL are unhappy, they should petition to join the city of Vancouver, not to have the city of Vancouver hostile take over them.
Yeah, and I believe it would be hostile. Like, I do not think that either UBC itself wants the city of Vancouver butting up against them on their border. I think they enjoy
A demilitarized zone?
living in cowboy country. Basically, the fact that the applicant and the approval body for so many of these developments at UBC is the university itself, or UBC Properties Trust. It's like UBC Properties Trust has applied to the University of British Columbia for approval to do this thing that the University of British Columbia commanded them to apply for. It's an Ouroboros of planning.
Hey, this is a abolish the park board level absurd idea that we love because it gets us talking about things that are silly.
Sure, if we want to build a SkyTrain at UBC, and we should, and we do, like, the people who want to do it, I mean, it should be every single person who is running for city council and every single person who's running for mayor. But the people who are actually going to get those shovels in the ground are going to be the premier and the prime minister, because it is a very important corridor of national importance in terms of transportation. I think it was the number one busiest bus line in North America for a while, the 99B line, or whatever incarnation, R1, R2, whatever it is. Now, I don't live there anymore. It's always the B line to me. But it's going to require those higher levels of government to get on board with that. I don't know that, other than saying that I'm going to make this a priority in my relationship building and my asks to the federal and provincial government, it is really much of anything. Now, admittedly, Ken Sim has asked for some crazy things from the provincial government and has failed to ask for some crazy things from the provincial government by getting voted down at council. But it's a interesting... I don't know why Kareem Alam thinks this is the thing that is going to take Vancouver voters by storm.
Well, one of the ways to build SkyTrain we mentioned is money, and the city has no money to do it because they approved a 0% property tax increase last year, which came alongside, I think it's $50 million extra dollars to the Vancouver police, which means the city does not have the money it needs to keep running services at the level you are accustomed to. Since those budget debates in October and November, we've started to see random stories come up of like, oh, advisory councils are going to be canceled. People are mad at that. They'll keep the advisory councils. And it's kind of chaos because the budget they passed was vague, other than numbers are going down so that you don't have to pay $20 more a month to keep the city running, or less.
Now, that is exactly what you want in a budget. Vagueness and uncertainty. That's everyone at Sauder is going to be able to tell you the most important thing when doing fiscal planning is that you not know how much money you have or what you're going to spend it on as you embark on that spending program. So I think ABC should be patting themselves on the back, perhaps quite forcefully, or upside the head. One of the two, I'm not sure. Vagueness. Isn't it great?
This has led to layoffs beginning to happen in different ways. One thing that did come out is the city is having some challenges laying off people because it turns out unions give you protection, and Ken Sim may have forgotten that.
Yes, QP Local 15, which represents about 4,000 employees with the City Park Board and various community centres, has filed a complaint with the BC Labour Relations Board last Christmas Eve, saying that during last year's collective bargaining negotiations, important info that they were entitled to have about coming job cuts was unfairly withheld from them. Now, it's possible that given the state of city planning, they didn't know about these job cuts because they have no idea what they're doing and don't have a plan and are just flying by the seat of their pants. That'd be an interesting defense for the lawyers to run with in front of the Labor Relations Board. No, we didn't withhold this information. We just made it up. It is going to have to be adjudicated before Labor Relations and determine whether or not that city and the city's bargaining units were acting in bad faith when they were negotiating their contracts last year. It used to be a bit of a problem with respect to city employees. If you'll remember, a couple of years ago, a policy had been enacted by, I don't know if it was under Vision or the Rainbow Council under Stewart. It was policy to make Vancouver a living wage employer, which would involve paying all city employees in the range of about $25 an hour, which is the calculated amount that would allow someone to live in the city in which they are working. In principle, it seems like a sensible or fair-minded thing, but a motion came back after that policy was struck down under ABC, and it too has failed.
That's not surprising.
No, it's not. And ABC has their majority, and they're going to do what they're going to do. But councillors Fry, Maloney, and Bly all supported that living wage motion, like bring back the living wage policy. So if any one of those people could end up mayor, frankly, at this point, who knows where...
it won't be Lucy Maloney.
That's fair. I mean, who knows? Who knows? The vagueness is something we can commit to as well. I understand it was quite foggy in Vancouver recently.
One of the ways they want to address that is when the fog comes out, the headlights go on, and those new headlights are annoying. One of the motions that came, I think it was from Sean Orr, to City Council, is that headlights are too bright and we need to call on the federal government to address this and change the safety standards. And Council agreed, and they are writing a letter to Ottawa.
And what a letter I'm sure that will be. Now, I think headlights are too bright. Admittedly, I will admit that this particular story sounds a little like the kind of Sun paper style little rip snorting dose of anger. The headlights too bright. But I think it is a legitimate safety issue. I don't frankly know why the federal government is the one in charge of that, but they are. It just seems like one of those things where it would fall to the province in my mind, but it is not. I suppose setting national standards is good for car makers. I don't want a securities style issue to plague our already embattled auto sector.
So at least it's one good moment of collaboration for council. Another traffic idea has come forward from one city mayoral candidate, William Azarov, which is to spend $200 million to upgrade and modernize the traffic lights across the city, basically allowing them to do smarter controls, coordinated traffic signals, give priority to buses wherever necessary, and just really bring our traffic lights to the 21st century.
So I think this is actually a great idea. I think it's a thing that can be achieved with pretty extensive testing. I'm not skeptical so much as cautious when it comes to spending what is quite a bit of money to do quite a bit of changes to how our traffic flows. We already have on-the-fly control in Vancouver that I think the rest of the world is poor for not having, and those are those delightful flashing greens that are controlled by pedestrians. Being able to expand how traffic lights respond to changing traffic flows is a complex problem that is going to require some very sophisticated modeling and programming. So not only is this going to be an expensive hardware infrastructure thing, but a back-end software investment that must be gotten right the first time.
A lot of this is already underway. So Vancouver does have 590 intersections that already run on these variable smart timers that can be set to morning peak, off peak, emergency mode, special event mode. And there's 815 more to replace. And they're aiming to do 30 to 45 of these annually, but Azeroff says they're only doing about 16 a year. So they'll never finish. By the time they're done, they have to start replacing all over. So he's basically wanting to expedite that plan so everything is done by 2035, and that's why it jumps the cost to 88 to 200 million. If you drive up Granville, those lights are well timed, that you can get from Richmond to the Lionsgate Bridge when there's no traffic without hitting a red.
Yes.
But that isn't citywide. Now, does every little light in the city need this upgrade? No, there is a prioritization scheme. And so I think what's good here is Azeroff suggesting, let's step up the ambition of improving the city, especially where it will help transit. That will make buses move faster. That makes people like buses more, which helps TransLink. So I do think it's a worthwhile investment. Maybe 8 years is more ambitious than it needs to be, but we need more ambitious people running for mayor. So I give him credit for that one. It's nice to see some interesting ideas come up.
Now, you mentioned he is a One City mayoral candidate. He's currently contesting the nomination for One City's mayoral nomination, correct?
He is standing against Amanda Burrows. I put out an episode a few weeks ago where we had interviews with both of them, so I encourage listeners to go back and listen to the most recent episode before this, where you can hear from both of those candidates. Burrows' ideas include community grocery stores, promoted by the city but run by local nonprofits. Both are pro-housing to varying degrees.
I've been shocked if one of them came out against housing.
You can get into the right corner of blue sky and find people who think so-and-so is not strong on this or that, but generally both think housing should be built and more of it is good. Burrows comes from more of a nonprofit side. Azeroff has also worked in development. They're two talented people. I'm interested to see who One City members pick. The membership deadline is already passed, though.
Well, you can't sign up if you're not already a One City member. I know that there are One City members who are listening to this, so do not forget, mark it in your calendars. February 11th, 2026 is the day that One City is going to be selecting their mayoral candidate, who will be joining the ever-growing ranks of people attempting to knock Kem Sim off Vancouver's throne.
Speaking of housing, should we blast through a few housing stories?
Speaking of blasting and housing, there is a risk, according to a recent report, of a home price jump of up to 27% by 2032 due to delayed construction. Right now, there are about 7,000 unsold or unoccupied condos in BC. It is an amount that hasn't been seen actually since the late 1990s. The fact that the supply has increased so much in comparison to demand mirrors what happened after the 2008 fiscal catastrophe, where houses were being built but no one was buying them for a couple of years, which led to a slowdown in construction, which led to the skyrocketing prices of the 2010s. So the government needs to take a look at this and figure out how to make sure that BC keeps building, and Vancouver in particular, keep building houses.
Yeah, the construction industry's challenged right now in the development industry generally because of that drop in demand, which is multifactorial. The increase in mortgage rates is definitely harming a lot. The major cuts to immigration is also driving down demand. The challenge, I think people are looking out there and going, so supply is up, demand is down, and yet prices aren't doing what economists tell me it's supposed to do, which makes people understandably mad. So I'm curious to see how the housing debates go in the next year. I suspect they will continue to be as toxic as ever, but hopefully some developers can cut some prices and fire sale their inventory. We are seeing prices come down a little bit. If we can just keep that trend flat to slight slow.
A soft landing is what we are looking for. We don't want to stall. We need the stock to keep going up because Vancouver is going to continue to grow. And with Vancouver growing, more hospitals are needed. So not only is the new St. Paul's campus going up at a shocking rate, Vancouver City Council has approved 2 new towers for the Vancouver General Hospital.
Yeah, I was confused for a minute why a hospital should have to apply for rezoning, but the hospital had actually bought out a residential complex that they are going to knock down and evict the residents so that they can put up, needed hospital beds. Those residents will be protected by the city's Broadway rezoning tenant protections, at least.
Which means they're going to get some money, basically,
Yeah.
for their loss of rental tenure, because, of course, there will be no right to return unless they
Are sick.
Yeah.
Which is different.
We have socialized medicine-ish in Canada. A continuing issue is the fate of industrial land in the city. Vancouver City Council has decided to approve a mixed-use light industrial and residential tower on land currently zoned for light industry. This is just a couple blocks to the west of the Cambie Street Bridge on-ramp on the south side of False Creek. And the Strand, the developer, had this package to City Council. They originally had proposed a smaller industrial office building for the site, but upon reflection and the fact that the office rental economy kind of collapsed due to COVID, they didn't want to build that, which, I mean, fair enough. Don't build things that people don't want. So they decided that they were going to have 3 stories of light industry and then a 25-story tower on top of it that would be filled with houses, because where else would you want to live other than light industrial? I actually think that mixed communities are pretty good.
Decide how much I should take my zoning guidance, and the answer is not much or at all, from SimCity and City Skylines, but you never really want to, like, mixing residential and commercial can work up to the point where late night clubs start to get too loud for the people who want to sleep at night and have families. Industrial has the stereotypical mindset of factories and smokestacks, but often is just warehouses and storage space or smaller manufacturing facilities that do printing.
I used to live in the area that is classified under Vancouver City Parking as Mount Pleasant Industrial, which is the area to the west of Main and east of Cambie Streets, north of Broadway. That area has a bunch of apartment buildings at John Rogers Park, but it has a ton of light industrial uses, whether that's cleaning companies or Lonsdale Leather is there now, a bunch of industrial bakeries, like big bakeries, purebred in there. And it's a lovely little community. I encourage anyone who's in the area to go check it out, get some pastry and go sit in John Rogers Park. It's beautiful. I don't think this is conceptually something that is necessarily bad. However, city staff did. City staff presented 3 options to City Council. One was what city staff wanted City Council to do, was to refer Strand's application back to staff for future consideration. They could also have rejected it. They could also support it and ask Metro Vancouver to redesignate land from industrial to general urban, because you have to generally, when you are rezoning industrial land, go to the regional government and ask for that rezoning. Council, however, decided they wanted a 4th option, and so Sarah Kirby-Young came riding in and decided that she thought that Council should invoke the Municipal Flexibility Clause, which allows Council to change the use of industrial properties of a certain size without Metro Board approval. And thus they did.
That's interesting that Sarah Kirby-Young is smart and has served on Metro Vancouver Board. Potentially she knew this existed. The reason industrial land matters is we have very little of it region-wide, but it is a collective value to preserve it for industry or our economy collapses.
And admittedly, like, the building there is less industrial floor space than would be replacing it. Like, the 3 stories of light industry that are part of this 25-story tower would be more light industrial space than currently exists. So that's a positive. It's just something we should be cautious about. Vancouver does a really bad job of utilizing its existing industrial land. Case in point, the Concord Pacific lands, which have sat vacant for way too long.
Hey, the city is hoping the province or the federal government or someone will pay money to rip out the viaducts so we can eventually get on with the Northeast False Creek plan to solve the issue.
Well, if wishes were horses, then beggars would drive, I guess. But not on a redeveloped viaduct neighborhood. It's all something that might have to just be thrown into the trash. And where would that trash go?
Right now it goes to Delta, where the city of Vancouver's landfill presently is. It had been slated to close in, I believe, 9 years as it starts to fill up, as landfills tend to do.
It's in the name.
They have reviewed all the numbers and how fast people are throwing shit out, and thankfully y'all are doing a good job cutting your waste down, and they can extend the life of this landfill to 2050. Delta is happy with this because the city of Vancouver just cuts them a check every year to send the garbage to that municipality, and they're going to throw in a little bit more money for environmental damage caused by massive amounts of garbage going out to Delta.
Well, we end every episode of the Canby Report with a Vancouveratta, a little tidbit from history, and this time it is Everett Crowley Park.
Yes, this is the site of Vancouver's former landfill. This is on Kerr Street in southeast Vancouver, right on the border with Burnaby, down at the river's edge. It served as a landfill from 1944 till 1967. It was closed at that point, where the waste was 49 meters deep in places. It took about 20 years for residents to finally get the city to reopen it as a park. A lot of the park is just naturally overgrown, essentially. It's not a planned park initially. It was like, well, we closed this dump, covered it in dirt, and then blackberries and other invasive species reforested it, and then we can just dedicate it a park. And they named it after the former park board commissioner, Everett Crowley, who was also the owner of Avalon Dairy, the last independent dairy in the city. This one comes to me via TikTok, where there's a great channel to follow called Vancouver's Forgotten Monuments. I think this guy's name is Graham. He's a pastor or something, but he does really great videos that are standalone Vancouverattas. So go give him a follow. We'll put the link in the show notes.
It's going to be a very exciting year as the multitude of mayoral candidates, the plethora of new parties, duke it out for control of the city. We will be bringing it to you as often as we possibly can. No promises, but best efforts, certainly. For Leg and Boot Media, I'm Matthew Naylor.
I'm Ian Bushfield.
Good night.